Hey guys, my name is Patrick Foley, or Patrick4D as you might know me on social media, and this is video 3 of the series, kind of making this abstract render from scratch using Cinema 4D and Octane. Last we kind of built out the lighting and modeled this thing, and I think we're ready to texture this thing, so if you'll stay tuned, we'll start making that thing right here. So we're looking good. So I think we can start texturing this thing. Notice we got some carbon fiber texture looking here. We got some like bubbly textures and the subsurface scattering kind of like oily texture here, which is really cool. So I think we're in good shape here, and that should be good. So the first thing we can do is create the bubbles, I guess. What we'll want to do is, these are the exact same shape, or the same shaders I used for the outer ones as the inners. So pretty simple. Let's go to objects, or I'm sorry, materials. Let's go to specular, Octane specular material, and we can really just take the take these guys and put them on the top hierarchy here, and already this gives a really cool look. But you'll see that everything is super magnified, whereas in this one I don't think it's magnifying as much, because we can still see no deformation, or at least not nearly as much of one behind. And with this, you can kind of see that this stuff is getting all out of whack. So for some people, I think they'll like that, but for this, we won't want that. So what we want to do to create some nice realistic refraction is actually collapse these two. Oops. Take both of these and Alt-G. These can just be general spheres. And we're going to take this whole hierarchy, this whole folder, and make it a child of the cloth surface. So we're going to drag this on top. Of course, we don't need a subdivision like we said before, and make the thickness a value of like 0.1. And now you'll see these things are not creating nearly as much deformation. They look like nice bubbles like we had it. Of course, you can always manipulate the refraction index within the material editor as well, but that looks good. So the next thing we want to do is click common here within the material editor and click fake shadows. It'll just clear any kind of, if there were any objects within inside, it gives accurate light hitting within. So if you don't have this checked, you'll have a lot of dark patches if there were objects inside these bubbles. So this just gives it a more realistic version of how light travels inside, and that should be good. And if you want to do anything more, you can just take the transmission and bump this up to 100%, to make them a little bit brighter. Add some color if you want, totally up to you guys. Looks kind of cool. But we'll leave that there for now. And then the next thing, let's go work on the subsurface scattering here. And this is where the 2080 Ti's, the RTX 2080 Ti's really do well, because I know subsurface scattering it kind of chugs the computers a little bit, so these guys just knock right through it. So let's go to the materials, another Octane specular material. Love that. If you want to call this like glass, so you don't get confused, call this SSS for subsurface scattering. Let's drag this on the volume mesher. Love that, looks cool. But what you'll want to do is, within this guy, we are going to again go to the common, fake shadows, make sure that's checked on, and then you're going to want to go to the node editor. So let's open up the node editor here. We can delete this guy, and we'll try to make some room here. I usually have multiple monitors set up, but for this, we'll have to make do. So we'll have a smaller kind of window here. Let's move this stuff to the side. Cool. And as you can see, we got a node here, and when I first started using nodes, I was very intimidated, but it's very simple how you can do like the most complex looking things. So what we're going to do here is go all the way down to the medium tab and go to scattering. Of course, this makes the whole thing black. We don't want that, although it does look cool. And we're going to take an RGB spectrum out and a float texture. The float being a value of 0 to 1, that's just going to be used for the scattering. So now we can see light's kind of hitting this thing and dying out a little bit, and depending on where this value is, we can get some really scattered looking objects here. So the main thing we want to adjust here is the RGB spectrum, so let's go absorption. And we can see if this thing is all the way at the top, this thing essentially without a float is just glass. But when we add float, And that creates kind of this really cool milky subsurface scattering texture. And so after that, we just manipulate the color. So I like the consistency of this, and I think before I had like this yellowish tint. So I think we can just bump this up a little bit, and you can see you don't need a lot at all, you just kind of need a little bit. And let's move this down a little bit, and you can also manipulate it using this kind of spectrum. But this already looks great. So, you know, just messing around with the colors, seeing what looks cool, and notice the RTX is on here. By the way, to manipulate that, all you have to do is go to, where is it? I believe Octane settings, go to settings, device settings here within device, and use RTX acceleration. And you can see both my GPUs right here. So we're looking good there. And I think what I want to do is go back to some kind of like yellow, which is really cool. Like that. And I think that's good for that. The next thing we can do is we'll enter that node editor in a second. The next thing we want to do is create the, I guess the platform. Save the carbon fiber for last. So platform, let's just do an easy, let's see, what did I use for this one? Kind of a metallic, cool. So let's go to materials, metallic, and drag that on. And this actually looks really clean. There's not too much detail because it's flawless. So very simple way of doing that, or of creating some roughness is, of course, going to the roughness tab and a little bit of roughness so we can see some edges. That looks nice and cool. Losing a little bit in the back, but if you like that look, totally cool. Maybe rough it up a little bit. Perfect. We're looking good. Of course, we got 200 segments, and it really doesn't look that bad. So we're chugging along here. So the last thing we got to do is get this kind of carbon fibery texture going. And what you want to do that is creating another Octane metallic material. So we can call this one like base, and this one CF for carbon fiber. So we can just drag this on to this guy right here. This will be the first carbon fiber, and once we finish this carbon fiber texture, we'll just map it onto the sphere inside. And what we can do is, within the node editor, we can delete that. This really just comes down to a simple projection of a checkered. So let's drag the checkered value here, and let's also grab a mix value. Let's drag the mix to the, where is it, specular, and let's drag the checkered marks to the amount. And we're going to go from RGB spectrum here. Let's go down to 0. Duplicate this by holding down Control and dragging. And let's zoom in there. Let's go texture 2. So this is totally black. What you can do is they're both black, so what you can do is make one of them a little bit brighter. And you might not be able to see anything. What you want to do actually is create one to be full white so you can see the difference here before you make it subtle. So these check marks are too big. They're mapped out too big, so you don't really see anything. I think you can see the black here and the shiny here. But you're going to click the checkered and go projection, UV transform, create these two little nodes, and go all the way down to box. And then we're going to go to the transform and bring this all the way down. And you can see what we have here is a really messed up version of this carbon fiber because the box is not mapping well. So what we're going to do is go to the, where are we going to go? Let's go to the roughness. And just bump this up a little bit to make it a little bit more visible of what we're doing here. And what I want to do is kind of make these things not look so different and rectangular, but more square, I guess. So we're going to unlock this aspect ratio, and it looks like we just need to take the X down. And take the, let's take the Z value all the way up. And let's see, and you can see how you can manipulate these things, really fine tune them. And to me that looks pretty good, so we can take the white down. And that's what really makes this thing look like carbon fiber. So if we want a little bit more fine, let's lock the aspect ratio again and just like decrease the amount. Now if we zoom in, we can see this really cool texture. So I think the majority of our problems were the fact that we needed to take the Z all the way up, and now we're getting kind of a seamless looking texture here. And what we can do is, just while we're at it, apply this CF or carbon fiber texture to the sphere inside, and that's starting to look really cool. So we do have a black background. That's up to you guys what you want to put behind it. That looks pretty clean. I know we're losing some detail here because we don't have like an HDRI wrapped around it. So what we can do is, I guess, let's increase our overhead by just clicking it, hitting T, and just increasing this thing until we can see everything. Kind of cool. Let's take the overhead light down. So we're getting kind of like a metallic, like it's in a showroom kind of look now, so much brighter. So it just depends on what vibe you guys are going with, and that should be good. So what we can do here is now mess with the kind of post effects here. So I think it needs a little bit of spice, like some bloom, or right now it looks too perfect. So what we're gonna do is go to the camera settings. Let's go to camera imager, and because we kind of made this highlight compression so dramatic, we're kind of getting a flat image here. So let's bring down the gamma a little bit, increase the exposure a little bit, what I like to do, especially if I'm not going to use Photoshop or anything. For this tutorial, I'm not. I'm just going to kind of bump out this image from Cinema. And yeah, the next thing we can do is go to post-processing and enable. Nothing happens, but if you increase the bloom power, you're starting to get some nice, cool bloom or kind of lens flare looking things. And glare power is also really prime one to use if you have like really harsh highlights. So let's take the glare amount down to 2, so there's only 2 of them. Let's blur the glare a little bit, add some spectral intensity. This gives us that really cool like film burn. So maybe just a little bit of that. And I think we're looking good. From here you can use a response or kind of like a LUT. I know a lot of these look really cool. Usually you wouldn't want to use this in like a client project because these are just used to kind of use in the meantime. And then you can color later in a program like After Effects or Photoshop or anything like that. So to me this looks good. I can just keep this at sRGB, but because I manipulated the gamma already, that should be good. So that's it, guys. I think that's it for this class or tutorial. Got pretty close. I manipulated the colors a little bit further, made it a little bit warmer. Do what you need to do with the saturation, all this stuff. But I think we're looking pretty good, and that's it. The only thing you have to do now is go to maybe Octane settings and increase the max samples to something like 800 or 1200, and choose your resolution, and you should be good to go. So. And I think that just about does it to wrap this video up. Thanks again for checking out this video and kind of making this thing from scratch with me. Of course, using Cinema 4D and Octane. And yeah, be on the lookout for my future videos that I come out on this channel. And yeah, I'm very excited for it. And I think we got a lot of good content to go through. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for these 3 videos for this series, how to make an abstract render using Cinema 4D and Octane. And take care, guys. Thanks again.